welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo. Coming up on the show...
Okay, Barjo, you have to wear the dress.
No, we were just kidding about that last week.
I don't think we were. I'm pretty sure you said you'd wear it.
No.
Are you going to wear it?
Yeah.
And now the viewers have voted on a poll, so you have to wear it.
Coming up on the show this week, it's a gaming bonanza that continues with Call of Duty Black Ops dedicated to much of the episode. I'm just going to put that on the ground.
I got you!
Plus, an absolute classic gets a reboot. But does the inclusion of Daniel Craig stuff it up?
And perhaps the best racing game we've played in years, and Barjo will wear the tutu. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Nice stunt, Max. Are you receiving me okay?
I hear ya.
News time, Barjo. Why don't you take this and get changed on your way back?
No.
Huh?
No.
Huh? Yeah.
Here's serious business.
It's gonna look great.
Good game.
ZeniMax is rapidly expanding its global operations. The parent company of Bethesda Softworks, the creators of Fallout 3 and Oblivion, ZeniMax had already caused a stir with the acquisition of id Software, the home of Quake, Rage, and Doom.
On his 21st birthday, Jackie Estacano was going to pay the ultimate price.
ZeniMax has now added 2 more notches to its belt, Machine Games and Tango Studios. While not exactly household names, these 2 firms are chock full of elite talent. Machine Games was founded by veterans of Starbreeze, the dev that made The Darkness, and Tango is the new startup from Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil and Vanquish.
We will be victorious.
Blizzard Entertainment is now suing not 1, but 2 South Korean TV networks. Their crime? Broadcasting StarCraft matches without explicit permission from the game developer. StarCraft is practically the national sport in the East Asian economic powerhouse, and Blizzard has been escalating its efforts to enforce its control over the game's broadcast rights. Who knows when this litigious nerd rush will end? And on a lighter note, a street in a new suburb in Spain has been named after Super Mario. Dubbed Avenida de Super Mario Bros., this thoroughfare in the new property development of Acasur is the first to be named after a video game. Streets named after The Legend of Zelda, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Space Invaders are also under construction. Acasur will ultimately be home to 60,000 residents. The project is a government initiative designed to help Spaniards aged 20 to 35 own their own homes for the first time. And what better tool to get the new homeowners on board than nostalgia? Mamma mia.
Good game.
And now it's time to answer the Call of Duty.
Barjo, it's time.
No, not now.
Oh, no, I believe we had an agreement.
Stupid web hole.
Call of Duty Black Ops has been out for almost a week now, so we're going to assume that just about everyone and their dogs have played this game twice over. But just in case your dog is stuck on a level, we won't spoil anything for you, but we are going to show you some awesome moments, starting right now.
Go, go.
It's good that there's actually something to spoil at all. You know, Call of Duty stories have always just been a bunch of scenarios played out with 50 different silent protagonists, or it's always, you know, stop the terrorist, but here you actually play a character, and his name is Alex Mason.
Isn't that the guy from Red Faction Guerrilla?
No, that's Alec Mason, totally different.
Oh.
Alex Mason
You will answer our question.
is a United States special operative who finds himself strapped into a chair being interrogated by some rather mysterious and not very nice people.
You are. What's your name?
You!
He also has a voice and is easily the most memorable Call of Duty character to date, even without a moustache.
Each mission is a flashback sequence that you relive while under interrogation. And I really loved this idea badge. It just really freed up the mission's structure. You know, 1 minute you're running through the streets of Cuba and the next you're busting out of windows on a motorcycle.
There's just so much variety here, and the pacing is breakneck. It's like they've crammed every single action movie ever made into one big game and then cranked it up to 11, or even possibly 12. It never lets up, and just when you think, okay, I'm over this level, bam, you're back in the chair, and then bam, you're back in there.
It's a great mix of missions too, from political assassinations to driving a boat down Da Nang while listening to the Stones. flying choppers or swapping between directing and playing as ground forces from a Blackbird, or just fighting off waves of baddies. It's still very much that typical Call of Duty linear roller coaster experience, but I mean, it's great to have so much variety in there.
Yeah, and there's such great settings too. You know, the Cold War is still fairly unexplored by games, so it's a bit of a breath of fresh air taking part in all of these Black Ops, even though, you know, they're fictional. Probably. And since you'll be fighting in lots of different conflicts, you'll have access to lots of sweet gear. From AK-47s with flamethrowers attached to some good old World War II guns, and my personal favourite, shotguns with incendiary rounds. There's just heaps of guns to choose from here. Call of Duty has always had a lot of guns, but Black Ops takes the cake.
Yeah, and there's tons of different dudes to fight as well, from Cubans, Vietnamese, Russians, even British, and of course some snow Nazis thrown in for good measure. Each has their own distinct AI too, which I thought was really clever. Vietnamese, for example, will charge in big numbers, whereas the Russian Spetsnaz will tend to be more strategic and do lots of combat rolls to evade your shots.
Although sometimes those Russians, they roll when they really don't need to. It looks a bit funny. I think it adds to each location too when you have to fight a different type of AI, and some are more engaging than others, but it's good that it's there. Also, I found that your teammates were much better at taking out enemies around you. You know, you didn't feel like they weren't doing anything, which is just so common in games lately.
Also, those sections where infinite enemies keep coming at you until you move forward or back. I'd almost forgotten about those sections because they weren't in Modern Warfare 2, and at one point I was just stuck in this one bit killing dude after dude after dude, and then I realised, oh yeah, infinite. Although I have to admit I hung back a little bit just to get a few more kills in.
The campaign is a bit over 7 hours long, but it's the same intensity as COD 4's campaign, and it's just full of those holy crap moments.
Yeah, they really like to make you feel like a hero. Developer Treyarch have done a great job here, and it looks and sounds excellent. Plenty of big levels with lots of action going on. There's a fair bit of room to scale up the graphics settings in the PC version too, including a setting for extra bodies. Black Ops is the kind of game that you'll start playing and then quickly forget that you're even playing a game because it's just so good at putting you in the moment. But of course, the longevity with COD comes from the multiplayer, and we hit a bit of a roadblock there.
Yeah, so if you're a PC gamer and you went online on launch day, then you probably saw a bit of this.
And a bit of this.
And a little bit of this.
And a bit of this.
Yep, laggy.
Apparently the console launch was relatively smooth, but sadly that wasn't the case on PC. In fact, it was pretty broken, to be honest. There's plenty of servers, but they all had seesaw pings and connection dropouts and just massive unplayable lag amongst other issues.
I guess you can expect a few problems with such a big game on launch day, but this was pretty unplayable for most of the night. The menus were also pretty laggy, and I think this is why at one point I actually lost a couple of ranks and all the XP I'd earned. That really was annoying.
Yeah, that really sucks.
But, you know, to be fair, by the second night, most of the lag issues were solved, but there's still obviously a bit of work that needs to be done.
We've only been able to scratch the surface really, but the good news is that the online is much more fully featured and customizable than your average FPS, and it's much more interesting than previous Call of Duties.
Along with a bunch of familiar perks, kill streaks and weapons, there's plenty of new stuff to play with, such as a rather nasty close-quarter flamethrower attachment. There's also SAM missiles, which are a fantastic counter to enemy airborne spy planes and helicopters. Heck, there's just something so gratifying about watching a SAM missile take out an annoying, pesky helicopter, almost as satisfying as a Tomahawk one-hit kill.
I like those remote control balls of death. Sending your kamikaze buggy after a panicking enemy never gets old. There's also mortar strikes, napalm, and much, much more, but the big difference here is that in Black Ops, nothing is free.
Earning XP and leveling up still unlocks items, but you'll need to earn COD points to purchase them before you can use them. And this goes for everything from attachments to weapons to perks to even your placard. I love this hex. Not only is this system grandly addictive in a good way, but it also makes you put more care into building your class, and you're forced to make some tough choices. And it just adds so much longevity to the game as well. You know, I often bail on an FPS once I've unlocked everything, you know, and just go back for a quick fix now and then, but I can see myself just coming back here and just building more classes and unlocking as much stuff as possible until I've got everything.
I like the contract system too.
Yeah.
You have up to 3 contracts at once. They're like challenges, but you have to purchase them, and they range from winning 2 rounds in a short period of time to getting 3 shotgun kills in a row without dying, and they get harder and harder. If you fail, you lose your buyout points and you can't try again for a time. But if you win, you get the fat COD points, and there's also XP rewards too.
You can also enter wager matches, and there's a whole bunch of really fun, interesting modes here too. And If you do really well in those matches, you earn quite a lot of COD points, but if you do badly, you get nothing. And these have a buy-in as well. This is just another way to raise the stakes, and it's really intense when you have something to lose, and I think hardcore players or people who think they're hardcore will really get into this.
There's also a theatre mode now which records your plays so you can share them. The zombie mode from World at War is back, and there's also a practice mode with bots.
There's just so much to do online, Hex, and if you're into number crunching, which I am, then you're really going to get off on the stat tracking, which I did. You can see everything from the weapons you've used the most to how many kills you've gotten with that particular weapon, and even body hit locations. We should wrap this up though. Hex, final thoughts?
Black Ops single player is pure action, but they've also fixed the biggest issue that I had with the series, the storytelling. I loved it. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Track have done a great job here. They've taken all the best parts of Call of Duty games and just mixed it into a fine single player and a robust multiplayer game. There's even a bunch of hidden Easter egg games, and one of them is Zork. Oh my god. I'm giving it a conditional 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Why is it conditional?
Because of the online and the lag.
In all fairness though, it was much better than the Battlefield Bad Company 2 launch.
Can I take this tutu off now, please? It's shaving everywhere.
Good game.
Seacrest County has become the ultimate place to speed. A playground for the most exotic cars and drivers in the world. But this is not a lawless place. Constant competition has led to the creation of the world's fastest police force, Seacrest County Speed Enforcement. The SCPD spare no expense to redline it all the way and make you pay.
There have been a lot of Need for Speed games, some good, some bad, but the latest one is a little different to its predecessors because it's not really a Need for Speed game, it's a Burnout game. And that means there's no need to brake for those corners, just use other cars.
Criterion Games, the makers of Burnout, are behind this Need for Speed, and everything from the menus, the map design, the racetracks and music and unlocks, the feel of everything screams old school Burnout.
The races are broken up into 2 different campaigns, the cops and the racers. There's the standard races and duels, Hot Pursuit where they versus each other, and time trials with the added twist that the cops have penalties for every single collision.
When the rest of the game is so hectic, to suddenly have to brake around corners is really stressful. I liked it though, Barjo. I mean, it demands a lot more skill. You can bumper bar your way through maps, but to be successful, you'll need to constantly build your nitro by driving into oncoming traffic and performing takedowns, which is really addictive.
They got the drift mechanics just right, I think, Hex. A good drift is achieved by tapping or holding brake and accelerator together at the right time, or just by letting go of your accelerator and sliding into the corner. Busting out bits of nitro is very useful to pull out of those turns or a bum steer, or to avoid some sort of oncoming disaster. And you never really get tired of perfecting that drift. And when you pull off a spectacular drift around a really big, long, winding curve, it's incredibly satisfying. And I think it's a much more evolved and interesting drift than some of Criterion's other games, but it still keeps that really fun nitrous element to it.
Yeah, I found that all the tracks were designed too in such a way that you're not punished too much for going off-road. In fact, the Dusty Trail can be helpful as it opens up shortcuts, which have their own risk and reward to them because they can be quite narrow and dangerous. The difficulty is also so finely tuned that those last few seconds of every race always matter. This is aggressive racing at its best, and in a race, takedowns aren't easy to pull off at all, and I liked that you have to really work to take out other competitors by slamming them into a pole or into traffic, or just by slamming into them really, really hard. In Hot Pursuit, however, taking out a cop that's chasing you is a little bit more forgiving, and it needs to be, I think.
Yeah, and you also have a bunch of fancy gadgets to help you out. As you level up, along with the huge selection of very sexy cars that get thrown at you at every turn, you'll acquire and upgrade abilities such as the EMP that requires you to lock onto an enemy by keeping them in your line of sight. Spike traps, which damage and slow down your pursuers. A powerful turbo for racers. And roadblocks and helicopters for cops, which are all very exciting to use because they allow you to implement some tactics.
I love the way those helicopters bear down on your opponent's badge. We couldn't test out the online multiplayer, but it looks really promising. AI opponents really surprise me now and then with their smarts. During some of those one-on-one chases, they'll take random turns and jam your radar at the same time to try and mess you up. That's cheeky.
Our code was offline only, but we were able to check out a feature called Autolog in the demo, and this is a stat tracking feature which allows you to look at all your times against every other person on your friends list. And it really tapped into some competitive buttons that I didn't know I had, Hex. There's just something about seeing your friend's time that has beaten you on every single race pop up. And Hex, I could not go to sleep until I'd beaten every single person on my friends list. I just couldn't do it, and when I finally did, there may have been some wall smack talk.
Yeah, it's like the game sort of telling you, hey, this guy's better than you, what are you going to do about it? You know, having other people's stats that persistent and in your face, it really inspires some competition, and there's always that race to the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, and it takes out the need for you to go check some leaderboard too, and it's always there. Hot Pursuit is a very good looking racer, although it would have been nice to have more heads-up display options, you know, maybe to make a transparent display or just a cleaner one. Also, there's no cockpit view. There is bumper cam, but I guess that's stressful enough, so I don't really mind that too much.
I think as slick as this game's presentation is, do you think it's really necessary for every letter and menu movement to have its own fancy sound or whoosh to it?
Yes, I do. I wish I could turn off the takedown camera though. They look really good, but it takes control away from you for a small amount of time, and sometimes you'll be heading for a shortcut or you'll be trying to go a specific way and then you hit someone and they get taken out and the game takes over and then suddenly you're in the middle of a drift, and that kind of bugged me a little bit. Also, I kept running into this white truck and just seeing him everywhere. Who is this guy?
Yeah, he gets around.
Get off my back.
The crashes do look great though, especially heading into oncoming traffic. At times I'd be heading straight for a vehicle only to be frozen in their headlights, even though I also had headlights. I think all the crash conditions are closer to Burnout 3 than Revenge though, Barjo, which will make fans of those games really happy. I loved all the maps. They never got old and each have their own tough spots, so you can start to identify and master them on your subsequent runs. And just flooring it on those long straights is really cool.
It's been years since I've had this much fun in a racer, Hex. And before we wrap this up, I think we should mention the music, because I think it's so often underestimated how much music can make a racing game. I don't know why there aren't more arcadey, aggressive races out there like this. It's just pure fun. Assuming the online all comes together, I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it is wonderfully arcadey, but you still need to drive well to get those top times and progress to the faster cars. Some customization would have been nice and maybe some more detailed stats, but it's a great racer that loads quickly and plays fast, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
God of War 1, didn't start God of War 2, bought God of War 3, then got the HD collection and started it all again. So I've got all those left to finish. I never did finish Halo 2.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I have gone.
There's another one on my list that I haven't finished Red Dead yet, but I'm a ways through that. I never finished GT4, although that's a heroic effort finishing that thing. I got to like 89%, which anyone who's familiar with GT4 on the PS2 knows there's a huge amount of hours in that. I'm sure there are a few others that are close to finishing that I never quite got round to. Mass Effect 2, actually, yeah, I never quite got round to finishing that either. So there's a few on my plate, but hey, you know, we're making a video game, so you kind of put a lot of things on hold to finish those.
Good game.
Bond to MI6. Do you read me?
The most memorable games of the N64 era was, of course, GoldenEye, and it was also one of the most popular, so it's no real surprise that Activision have decided to make a new version of the game for this current generation of console. And when I found out, I was really excited, but that excitement was closely followed by trepidation because, well, the last thing I want is a dodgy remake to spoil my memory of the original.
Welcome to Russia.
Yeah, it's delicate ground to tread, isn't it? Taking such a well-loved game and beefing it up for present day. But I think developer Eurocom have approached this with a lot of love. It's by no means a disappointment. They didn't rely on the name itself just selling it, and they could have. They've done a good job here.
The single-player campaign of GoldenEye has a really well-balanced mix of the fresh and new and the wonderfully familiar.
Along with Agent 006, your mission is to infiltrate his base of operations.
The story roughly follows the same story as the 64 version and the movie. Bond has to infiltrate a dam in Soviet Russia where a nuclear weapons facility is hidden. Although I was a little miffed to discover that poor old Pierce Brosnan has been put out to pasture and replaced with our most recent Bond, Daniel Craig. I mean, this is GoldenEye. GoldenEye is Brosnan.
That was then and this is now. Brosnan's had his time. It's time to let go of the bros. I think Craig is also he's a more reckless, a more gutsier Bond, you know, and that shift in action is really represented in the game, and it just makes it more exciting to play.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he just makes ballsier decisions, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Are you going to kill me? No.
And I felt they did a good job here with the whole first-person interaction, you know. You really felt like, you know, with some FPSs, you really feel like it's just a screen and you got a gun and you're just moving through, but here you felt a connection. Everything you see through Bond's calculating eyes gives you a sense of being a secret agent as you take out guards or talk to NPCs.
Yes, he's right here. Yes, sir. Mr. Briggs is waiting for you at the top of the stairs, sir.
And it excels at that creep and pop-out gameplay. You'll have a lot of fun working the stealth and taking out security cameras, and whenever you fire upon an enemy with a silenced weapon, or if an enemy notices you, it'll play this sound cue followed by Bond's heartbeat.
Wait. Someone is coming.
Then you have about 2 seconds to take out any remaining dudes that you've alerted to your presence before the place gets flooded with reinforcements. It's really quite intense, isn't it? Your options are then to try and leg it to the next checkpoint or just massacre anything that comes at you. And you get a sense that Bond would have handled this with a lot more finesse, you know?
Yeah, but it does make you work hard later on to avoid that type of situation happening again.
I really enjoyed the variety of locations. I had a fuzzy memory of the N64 version, and seeing those updated reinterpretations was really great. Bond is such a jet setter, so every level is set in some different part of the world, and I just love that constant change of scenery. I particularly loved the nightclub level. It was very contemporary, although none of these partygoers seem to be having a very good time. Worst party ever.
The AI is impressive, and they'll do some great combat roles. You will come across some conveniently placed red barrels, but you let it go because it's Bond, you know. You apply the same suspension of disbelief as you would as if you were watching a Bond movie, and you just enjoy the explosions. There are some pretty good Bond moments here, Hex.
Stealth missions and gunplay is broken up with the occasional hacking or locating objectives using your fancy phone, which has replaced the old school gadget watch of yesteryear. I kinda miss that gadget watch, you know? I feel like it's been tossed out with classic gadgets like dart shooting cigarettes and X-ray sunglasses. I mean, it makes sense that today's spy would use his bloody phone for everything, but I mean, come on, it's just not as cool.
Yeah, all gadgets are cooler when they're in pen form, I think. We tried out a few different controller configurations, and Hex, I can't use the Wiimote to aim with for FPS. I just can't do it, it's too laggy. I think my favorite was definitely the GameCube controller. That just worked for me.
Yeah, my copy of the game came with this fancy gold version of the classic controller called the Classic Controller Pro, and I used that for pretty much the whole game. I mean, at the end of the day, you want that ease of stability and control.
But we should get to the thing that most people will be excited for, which is the multiplayer.
Indeed, the multiplayer is a wonderful nod to fans of the 64 era, with the return of classic characters like Jaws, Oddjob and Natalia, and game modes like Man with a Golden Gun and the much-loved paintball modifier. The maps are varying in size, which is great because with online offering up to 8 players to get in on the action, some of those more spacious maps will be really good for that.
Yeah, at one point we turned off the radar and just spent the whole map trying to find each other. Very spacious.
Although that hazmat outfit handicap that we gave you made you a little bit easier to spot.
Yeah, I regret taking that on. As much as I like being in a hazmat suit, which I like a lot, it wasn't worth it.
I'd thrash you, it just made you too easy to spot.
Yeah.
Every time.
Not fun. I think the modifiers are really good here. The new one, and my favorite, is the move your feet one, where you're not allowed to stop moving for more than 3 seconds or you're dead.
Yeah, 3 seconds into that round and we were both dead. I have to say I enjoyed my entire experience with this game, Barjo. I think this is really exciting for Wii owners and GoldenEye 64 fans alike. They just nailed that balance between contemporizing it enough to keep it fresh and new while retaining enough of the original for fans to reconnect with and reminisce over. And you just can't go past that multiplayer, so I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
You know, I was a Sega kid, so I didn't really have the nostalgic trip that you had with this, but even so, I had a great time here, and the Wii needs more shooters like this, and it's a good length, and it's a good shooter, and plenty of difficulty modes too for some replay value. I really enjoyed 007 Classic Hex because your health doesn't regenerate, and I like that challenge. I had a good time here. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens. So did you guess the game for this week? It was Max Steel on the Sega Dreamcast, one of Treyarch Studios' early third-person action games before they would go on to make Call of Duty Black Ops for Activision.
And that brings us to the end of another show, but we shall return next week with the game that I've probably been looking forward to more than any other this year. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
The presence of the Brotherhood, both directly and indirectly, will transform the city of Rome and its people.
And we'll see what the addition of keyboards does for Rock Band 3. Don't forget to head on over to the Good Game website and cast your vote in the Good Game Awards for 2010. There are many categories, including Best and Worst Game of the Year.
And we'll be announcing the winners in a special 1-hour episode of Good Game, Game of the Year edition, which will go to air early December.
Also on Spawn Point this week, the review of the latest Lord of the Rings game, Aragorn's Quest. Until next time, gamers, Barjo out.
Hex out. Ezio out.